So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with, the remnants of the Pac-12. We're only down to 4 teams. I didn't even need a hand, okay? We're down to 4 teams. That's crazy to think about right now. So, what is going to happen to the Pac-12, right? So I've seen a couple of rumors circulate, so to speak. So there's 2 or 3 ways that this is going to go down for the Pac-12 conference. One that I already did see, and again, these are rumors. Nothing has been confirmed yet to this point, but by the time that I get back on air for podcast number 5, I would really not be surprised to see that happen yet again, where we get more news in terms of what's happening with college football realignment. So, first possibility that could potentially happen here is we could see the Pac-12 merge with the Mountain West. So, those 4 teams, Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford, we could see them go over to the Mountain West, and that would be the quote unquote premier conference of West Coast football, the only conference that would be specifically West Coast, because who cares about regionality anymore? It's all about the dollar signs, unfortunately. That's just the nature of college sports right now. And that's just a byproduct of having folks in a room that are responsible for the future of several college athletes, student athletes, coaches, athletic directors as well. And they don't realize what college football should be about. It should be about the regionality. It should be about the passions and the traditions. It's what it should be. But we're starting to stray away from that direction a little bit. And I truly do believe that college football realignment is going to be the biggest threat to not only college football, but for all of collegiate athletics. I mean, think about for those that are not in football, that are not in basketball, they're not going to get private jets. They're going to have to be in commercial flights at regular regional and international airports as well. I saw something on Twitter. Michigan, like the flight from Michigan to Eugene is actually farther than, say, Boston College flying to London, a completely different country, crossing an ocean as well. Like, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I've been on that flight from Ohio to Eugene. It's a long flight, dude. It is not, that flight is not for the weak whatsoever. My wife and I were struggling with that. But that is a possibility. Mountain West, I guess, would be the Pac Mountain Conference if they want to go with that. Pac Mountain, Mountain Pac, whatever you want to rock and roll with. They would jump up to 16 teams. That would include Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State. So the Pac-12 under that scenario would still exist as a conference, but it would not be considered a Power 5 conference. It would be more of that group of 5 tier where you would need to be essentially undefeated, and then also you need a little bit of luck with some chaos around college football to get a playoff team, at least under the 14 playoff. We'll be under a 12-team playoff in the future, so it won't be as bad. But this would not be a conference, I think, under that 12-team 12-team playoff format that would get, well, they would not get that second team, or at least I would have a hard time envisioning that. Other scenarios that I saw that could happen, could see Cal and Stanford possibly go independent, and then Oregon State and Washington State go to the Mountain West Conference as well. Stanford and Cal, they both are schools that have higher academic standards than most. So because of that, they're not as reliant on college athletics in order to bring that money in. Oregon State and Washington State do need a little bit more of that help from their athletics programs in order to, have a healthy size endowment, if that makes sense. So Cal and Stanford, they could go independent and play other like-minded schools that have these academic requirements. They could play some Duke, Notre Dame, Northwestern, for example, like those type of schools, and Cal. They could also play Cal under that independent schedule format, and then also play primarily teams that are on the West Coast some more. And Cal, same deal with them. That could see them doing that, and then Oregon State and Washington State going to the Mountain West. That would bring them up to 14 teams. Mountain Pack kind of thing, again, would be considered a G5 conference. I did also see some rumors today, actually, of Cal and Stanford being pursued by, I believe, was the ACC of all people. And I get regionality thrown out the door. I mean, I could see, a lot of the teams in the ACC right now, they're on a coast. Stanford and Cal, they're also on a coast. So, vision of the vision of the conference, that would kind of make sense too. Different coast, obviously, West Coast versus East Coast kind of thing. So I actually just saw that rumor today. Nothing about Oregon State or Washington State being acquired by the ACC. So kind of a similar deal. That would be really interesting to see how Stanford and Cal would make that work, and how the ACC would fit them into the ACC scheduling format. Because I think they're at 12 or 14 teams right now. That would bump them up to 16. And listen, the ACC is kind of on some shaky ground as well. Florida State rumored to potentially leave in the next few years. Miami kind of on the same boat as well. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen with the ACC. If they got Stanford and Cal, would that be enough to keep that conference together? I don't know, man. I really do not know. It's some tough questions being asked in athletic board meetings and board of trustees meetings around the country. That's some tough questions. And then one thing that I didn't see as a confirmed rumor of inquiry, something that I saw on TikTok, actually. I don't remember the TikTok guy's name. I do apologize for that. But Stanford and Cal could join the Big Ten, possibly get them to 20 teams. But before we say anything about that in the comment section, one thing that I do want to point out is that if the Big Ten does get to 20 teams, then what you could do for divisions at least is that one division could be the Pac-10, and that would have, like USC, UCLA, Stanford, Cal, plus Washington and Oregon, plus 4 of the Midwestern teams. And then the Eastern Midwestern teams could make up the Big Ten division. And then what you could do is you could possibly have those 2 teams meet at the Rose Bowl for the conference championship. I don't really know who mentioned that on TikTok, but I thought it was a neat idea. One downside to that, though, that at least in like a football standpoint, other sports might not be as bad. Like football, or no, basketball and baseball, you could probably play everybody like at least like one series and kind of like a round robin kind of thing. If the Big Ten would to do this, ultimately expand to 20 teams, you would have to go into a 9-game conference schedule, and you probably wouldn't play anybody in the other division. So that kind of defeats the purpose of having them in the same conference, in my opinion. But that would make it not as sucky, I guess, with Oregon and Washington going to the Big Ten. It's not a great option. It's not something that I love, but it's the one that I would maybe dislike the least, if that makes perfect sense to you guys. Because don't get me wrong, I'll enjoy USC and Ohio State play each other. I'll enjoy Michigan going to Altstadt Stadium. I am all for that all day long. I can get behind this, no problem. I guess I would prefer to have that more so as a non-conference game than as a conference game. But I'm just sitting in my house. I'm just sitting in my house. It's not you can see in the background. It's nothing too crazy out in here, but I'm not in charge of making these kinds of decisions that could affect thousands of student athletes around the country. So that's not my it's not my lane. But I guess I wish it was in my lane.